Holy f. What's up guys, Jack here with MTS, and this is the TP-Link blah 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 blah. Seriously, what the hell, TP-Link? This is an awesome switch, but you suck at naming your switches. Therefore, I will be taking over the job of naming your switches.
Henceforth, you shall be known as
Big Boy?
But naming aside, the TP-Link Big Boy is an 8-port, 2.5 gig PoE switch with a healthy PoE budget of 240 watts with two 10 gig SFP Plus ports. Now, one of the things that I really appreciate about the switch right off the bat is those two 10 gig SFP Plus ports, and the fact that with 8 2.5 gig ports, 8 times 2.5 is 20, 2 times 10 is 20, you have enough 10 gig uplinks that you can fully saturate the throughput of the RJ45 connectors on this switch. Unlike a lot of switches, especially 48 port switches that do have between 2 or 4 10 gig SFP Plus ports, say I'm for whatever reason maxing that switch out, I still can't get full throughput on those 10 gig ports because I usually would have 8 more ports than I have bandwidth for. I really appreciate that this has all of the bandwidth on the uplink for these ports. It really is an OCD thing. You're never gonna be maxing out this switch, but again, I just really like to see it. But with the basics out of the way, let's talk about this switch. Now, getting things started with reliability, this is the second unit of this switch that I've had. My first unit that TP-Link originally sent me a number of months ago has been in operation, has been working great, except for the fact that my UPS had an issue where it hard cut power to the switch, and the switch died in a weird way. Now, the switch would actually boot up, and I could console into it and reset it, send commands to it, but the switch chip itself wouldn't boot up. So all the ports were dead except for the console port. So a bit of a weird issue. Again, my sample size is 2, but hey, I just figured I'd let you guys know. Now, speaking of control and resetting the switch, we have to talk about controller options because along with every other TP-Link Omada product, there are a number of ways you can control it. First off, you can run this switch in standalone mode. Full-on local web GUI for managing every setting you could ever want on this switch. So if you don't want a central controller, you don't need it. If you only have this one switch, hey, it's all you need. But then you can manage this thing through TP-Link Omada. And if you're unfamiliar with Omada, it's basically TP-Link's unified competitor. You can run the software on a dedicated hardware appliance, such as this guy here, for under $100, or you can self-host it. Along with self-hosting, you also have hosting through TP-Link's cloud as an option. Now, along with that, there comes a time in every IT guy's life where they're working on their TP-Link Big Boy and they forget the master password because they've been resetting and reconfiguring the switch for 5 days straight. But anyway, when you go to reset the TP-Link Big Boy, you may be looking for where do you shove the paperclip. There's no place to shove a paperclip, there's no reset button, there is nothing. The only way to reset this switch, if you forget your password, is to console into it, stop the switch from booting, and then reset it. And to do that, you have to either regular console over RJ45 serial, or with USB console, change PuTTY to COM3, set your baud rate to 34800, and then plug the switch into power, wait about 1.5 seconds, and then hit connect. Then you have to mash your keyboard to stop the switch from booting, and then you can reset the switch. And if you miss that 1.5 second window, you have to do that whole thing over again because there's no other way to reset the switch. TP-Link, I have brain damage. Now, TP-Link said that they did this so that way, it improves security, so that way somebody doesn't just walk by and reset your switch. But if I have physical access to hit a reset button, I have physical access to reset it with a console cable. One of them is just a much bigger pain in the ass for me. Resetting the switch aside, let's talk about performance. Now, performance on this switch is flippin' sweet. I had one of my buddies come over with a few of his 2.5 gig network adapters. We loaded up a bunch of my computers with it, had a 2x link aggregated 10 gig connection, well, 20 gig with the link aggregation, to an all SSD server. and we were able to get about 16.5 gigabits of throughput. Now, we only had 7 clients connected. We didn't have that 8th port populated, but still 16.5 gigabits of sustained throughput. That was pretty awesome to see. Now, TP-Link designed this switch to be used with 2.5 gig Wi-Fi 6 access points, that being why it has 2.5 gig and PoE on all of the ports. But I want to use it for something else. So I use a lot of computers. I have 2 laptops, a handful of desktops, my main desktop here, a little Mac Mini that I'll use as a mini application server or primarily as a way to team viewer into something to have iMessage on my desktop. That's pretty nice. But the number one issue that you run into when using multiple computers, whether that be 7 computers like me or just, a laptop and a desktop, is file management. Where is this file? Where's this document? Is it on the laptop, the desktop? Did I make sure I put it on my flash drive to transfer to my desktop? Where are my files? And so my solution for the longest time has just been running, gigabit network to all of these things and storing all of my files on the central file server downstairs in my basement. The only computers that actually have any sort of real internal storage are this laptop and this desktop. Everything else basically just has a 250 gig boot drive, and then it points to the server for all of their files. And that has worked really well for me, except for I run into the speed limitations of a gigabit network. When I'm doing things like loading up VR games on the VR computer, those are being pulled from the server as well. One of the things that I can do with the server is all of the games get downloaded on my desktop and then synced to the server, and any other computer that I want to play a game on just points to the server for its files, so I don't have to keep updating games. But when I'm trying to do that over a gigabit connection, I start running into some latency issues, speed limitations, XYZ, blah, blah, blah. It's just not fast enough. But with 2.5 gig, I have, 2.5 times the bandwidth of gigabit. And for 30 bucks, I can get a NIC for any of these computers that's 2.5 gig. Even these laptops, I can just get a USB 2.5 gig NIC for, which was previously really unheard of unless you were talking about a 10 gig Thunderbolt network adapter, which those were like 200 bucks. Now I can get 2.5 gig, which not as fast as 10 gig, but still way better than gigabit and way cheaper. But that doesn't explain why I need PoE. Let's talk about that. Now, PoE is great for devices like access points, but I don't just use it for access points. My setup doesn't stay the same. I'm not your average home user. I run a production company right now out of an apartment. I need flexibility. I need the ability to say, hey, I don't need an access point here. I don't need that VR computer here. I need to plug in a DMX node. I need to plug in a flex switch for, doing a little setup out here, something similar to this.
I don't know what you guys do in your apartments, but I program lights in mine.
Works for me.
Being able to have PoE on all of my ports allows me to not have to deal with the frustration and headache of, oh, I plugged this ArtNet node in, why is it not working? Or I plugged this switch in, why is it not working? Oh, I need to run another power cable for something as simple as a little ArtNet node. I need to run another cable for a switch just so that way I can have multiple computers running. XYZ, blah, blah, blah. It doesn't matter. It's a frustration for me. And so having every port in my house be PoE just saves me a headache. So overall, I'm incredibly happy with the TP-Link Big Boy. Not only does its 240 watt PoE budget save me the headache of, oh, does this faster port not have PoE? Do I need a PoE injector? XYZ, blah, blah, blah. But it's also a much cheaper alternative to the only other solution to my computer storage problem. I would be going with 10 gig, but 10 gig in the home over RJ45 especially is a little bit cost prohibitive versus under 400 bucks for this switch plus $30 for a network card rather than $600 for a switch if you're looking at the MikroTik version, and then $100 per network card. Plus then that doesn't even give you PoE. This switch answers all of my problems except for one. This switch is designed to be, rack mounted in a network rack, and so the fans are a little loud. Out of the box, it sounds something like this.
a little bit too loud for the bedroom in my apartment. So I swapped out the fans with Noctuas, and now it sounds darn near silent.
But as long as you're not fully maxing the switch out, you should be good with the Noctua fan swap. But anyway guys, thank you all for watching. If you enjoyed this video, go ahead and drop a like. If you really liked it and want to see more of me in your subscription feed, well then you can go ahead and get subscribed. I'll have links down in the description of where you can buy this switch, along with the 2.5 gig access point that I talked about. But while you're down there, let me know what you think about 2.5 gig networking and where you see it taking over gigabit, or if you do see it taking over gigabit. But anyway guys, thank you all for watching, and I will see you in the next one. To see more of me in your subscription feed, well then you can holy Yep, please tell me you filmed that.